Okay, so next topic is economics. Yeah, again, economics will mostly be theory. So we will try to quickly go over it and then you can read it in detail. Uh, Economics starts with first topic in economics is topics in demand and supply analysis. So this topic just gives you an introduction to economics and the key concepts demand and supply. So before we go into discussing the topic, there are two types of economics: microeconomics and macroeconomics. So economics is the study of relationship between consumer and supplier. Key point to notice that it is the study of relationship between consumer and supplier. Consumer drives demand and supplier supplies product. So that means supply relates to the firm which is supplying and demand relates to the consumer which is consuming. And the study of relationship between these two is known as economics. Any problem so far? Now, when we say consumer and supplier, there are two ways to go about it. One way is that, for example, I only study this consumer and this firm and their relationship between its demand and its supply. That is known as microeconomics. So, microeconomics is when we talk about individual consumers and firms. Another way to go about it is that I sum up the demand from all the consumers in the economy and I sum up supply from all the firms within an economy. And when I talk about holistically about whole of the economy and aggregate demand and aggregate supply, that is known as macroeconomics. So macroeconomics is about aggregate demand and aggregate supply, and microeconomics is about individual consumer and individual firms. This first topic is based on microeconomics. So first it starts with microeconomics, then eventually the upcoming readings would be on macroeconomics. So starting with microeconomics and demand and supply concepts. So demand comes from consumer. So what is demand? Demand is consumer's willingness and ability to consume. By willingness we means consumer's willingness to buy something or to consume something, and by ability means that consumer should have enough money to buy or consume it. If consumer has willingness but no ability, do not have enough money, then demand wouldn't be created. And if consumers have ability but no willingness, demand will not be created. In order for demand to be created, willingness and ability both should be there, and that creates the demand. Similarly, in order for supply to be created, a firm should have willingness and ability both to produce and supply. So how do we make demand curve? So remember, demand curve is downward sloping. Why? Because we have quantity on x-axis and price on y-axis. So if price goes up, quantity demanded decreases. If something is more expensive, a consumer's ability will decrease and its demand will decrease. If something is less expensive or is cheaper, its quantity demanded will be higher. So remember, price and quantity demanded have inverse relationship. If price goes up, quantity goes down. If price goes down, quantity increases. And that's why you have a downward sloping demand curve. Any problem so far? Now with respect to change in demand, there can be two sources of change in demand or two causes of change in demand. There are reasons for changes in demand which causes movement in demand curve, and there are reasons which causes shift in demand curve. Remember, if demand is changing only due to price, then that causes movement in demand curve. So price. And if demand is changing due to any reason other than price, non-price factor, for example, consumer wealth, consumer trend, consumer taste, price of substitute, price of complement, or any other reason, that causes shift in demand curve. That is demand shifting left or right. By movement we means, for example, let's say price is currently $100 and demand is, for example, 90 units. Now let's say price goes up to 120. So demand will decrease to, let's say, for example, 40 units. So as price increases, demand decreases. This is the movement in demand curve. So that means when we talk about movement, price and demand moves in opposite direction. If one increases, other one decreases. But when we talk about shift, if there is something which is driving demand other than price, then that would cause both to move in the same direction. So remember this difference, that if I talk about a non-price factor changing the demand, that would cause price and demand to move in the same direction. So let's say that this is the demand curve and this is the supply curve and this is equilibrium. Now let's say that something changes, the consumer wealth level increases, consumer disposable income increases, and demand increases. So when demand increases due to any reason other than price, demand curve will shift. So let's say it shift towards right. When it shift towards right, previously the equilibrium was x1 and now new equilibrium will be formed at x2. At x2, demand will be higher and price will also be higher. So that means if demand is changing due to shift, then price and demand will move in the same direction. I have just used this sign to show the direction or tell about the direction. It does not mean that both are exactly inversely or directly proportional. This is just to show you that both moves in same direction and both moves in different direction in this case. Any problem so far? So this is difference between movement and shift. Now the question is that if price changes, obviously demand changes, which is movement. And you know that if price goes up, demand goes down. Now the question is that how much does it go down? And why is it important to know this question? Because what is your total revenue? Your total revenue is price into quantity. If I increase price, total revenue will increase, but then demand will decrease, so total revenue will decrease. So I do not know how much would the net impact be. Similarly, if I decrease price, total revenue will decrease, but quantity will increase. So I do not know how much would the net impact be. So in order to analyze the net impact on total revenue, I need to know the relationship between price and quantity demanded. That is, how much will quantity demand change if I change price. So that relationship is known as elasticity of demand. So elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. And remember this formula, this is very, very important. So if this is high, that means elasticity is high. If this is low, that means elasticity is low or inelastic. So our demand can be elastic or inelastic based on percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. If in absolute basis this number is greater than 1, it will be minus obviously, but in absolute terms, if it is greater than 1, absolute value is greater than 1, it is called elastic. If it is equals to 1, it is called unit elastic. And if it is less than 1, it is called inelastic. And when we draw a demand curve, remember this midpoint is unit elastic. This part below midpoint is inelastic demand, and this part above unit elastic is elastic demand. So remember, in a downward sloping demand curve, upper part has elastic demand, this center point is unit elastic, and the lower part has inelastic demand. Remember this and this formula. Any problem so far up till here? Okay, so another key point to note is that elasticity can be calculated using another formula, which is change in quantity divided by change in price multiplied by price divided by quantity. Remember this formula as well, and this is more important, I would say, with respect to practice questions. How? So what is percentage change in quantity demanded? Percentage change in quantity demanded means change in quantity divided by quantity. And what is percentage change in price? It means change in price divided by price. So it is the same thing. Only difference is that I have broken it down into more components. And why have I done that? That is to be able to solve questions that you will realize later. Any confusion up till here so far? Okay. So that is price elasticity of demand. Own price elasticity of demand means own percentage change in quantity divided by own percentage change in price. If instead of change in price, if I take percentage change in quantity demanded to percentage change in income, that is known as income elasticity of demand. And again, you can use another formula, which is this. And if instead of looking at own price or income, if I compare it to the price of some other product. So for example, I have a complement, and if I compare it to the price of a complement, then that is known as cross elasticity of demand. Complement means that those products are complements which the demand for which moves in the same direction. So for example, DVDs and DVD players, and substitutes are those for which demand moves in opposite direction. For example, e-books or hard copy books. So if I take, for example, percentage change in quantity demanded of X divided by percentage change in price of Y, another product, that is known as cross elasticity of demand. And again, I can use same formula, quantity demanded X divided by change in price Y multiplied by price of Y divided by price of quantity of X. So remember these formulas. Any problem so far up till here? So this is elastic, this is unit elastic, this is inelastic. And if demand is completely perfectly elastic means that quantity will go off, that is quantity will become zero as soon as you change the price. So that means you cannot change the price no matter what. If you change the price even by $1, quantity will vanish. This is known as perfectly elastic demand, and this perfectly elastic demand have a horizontal curve. And this is known as infinite elasticity. Infinite, that is perfectly elastic or infinite. If there is a product for which demand does not change no matter what the price is, that is you can keep on changing price and demand will not change, that is known as perfectly inelastic. And this elasticity is zero elasticity. So remember these shapes and graphs. This we have done. So if demand is elastic, so what is your total revenue? Total revenue is price into quantity. If you increase price and demand is elastic, so elastic demand means that quantity will decrease by a greater amount than price. Elastic means that percentage change in quantity will be higher than percentage change in price. So if you increase price by let's say 10%, quantity will decrease by, for example, 15%. So net impact will be minus 5%. So that means if you have elastic demand, then increase in price will result in decrease in total revenue, and decrease in price will result in increase in total revenue. So if price is decreasing, total revenue will increase. On the other hand, if you have inelastic demand, then decrease in price will result in decrease in total revenue. So remember, elastic demand, increase in price would result in decrease in revenue, and inelastic demand, increase in price will result in increase in revenue. So if demand is inelastic, then then a company would continue to increase prices. If demand is elastic, company will decrease the prices. This we have done, this we have done. Okay. So when we talk about income elasticity of demand, there are two types of goods: normal goods and inferior goods. Normal goods are those in which demand increases if income increases, and inferior goods are those in which demand decreases if income increases. Any problem so far up till here? So here is a question. It says that demand function is given to you. Demand function means the formula to drive demand or to calculate demand. And it has given you some additional details that price of ebooks are 10.68, household income is 2300, price of hardbound books are 21.4. And they have asked you to calculate own price elasticity of demand. So what is own price elasticity of demand? Own price elasticity is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Correct? And another formula is change in quantity demanded divided by change in price multiplied by price divided by quantity. We cannot use this formula. Why? Because we do not have percentage changes in quantity and price. So what will we do? We will use this second formula. How do we do this? So first we have to find out change in quantity demanded divided by change in price. So recall from your knowledge of maths, when we talk about a straight line or when we talk about a graph of a straight line, the equation is y is equals to mx plus c. This m is gradient or slope. What does it tell you? It tells you change in y with respect to change in x. So that means this coefficient with x tells you change in y with respect to change in x. So change in quantity demanded with respect to change in price will be the coefficient with what is it? Is it ebook or it is ebook? So this, if I am talking about own price elasticity of demand of ebooks, then change in demand with respect to change in price would be this 0.4, which is the coefficient with ebook, and this is not 0.4, this is actually minus 0.4. So that means this change in quantity demanded to change in price is minus 0.4, and then I need to multiply it with P divided by Q. So what is the price? Price is 10.68. So that means it should be minus 0.4 multiplied by 10.68 divided by quantity. Now I need to multiply it by quantity. So how do I do this? I calculate quantity using this formula. So quantity demanded equals 2 minus 0.4 multiplied by price of ebook, which is 10.68, plus 0.0005 multiplied by household income, which is 2300, plus 0.15 multiplied by price of hardbound book, which is 21.4. So when I calculate it, I will get the demand for ebook, and that comes out to be 2.088. So I plug this in here in this formula, and I calculate the elasticity of demand for ebooks, which is minus 2.046. So that means you first calculate quantity demanded, you plug this into the formula, you take price, you plug this into the formula, and how do you get change in quantity divided by change in price? You get it through this coefficient. On the other hand, if you are calculating elasticity of demand for income, that is income elasticity of demand, then you will take this particular coefficient. Or if you want to find out change in quantity demanded with respect to change in price of hardbound book, then you take this coefficient. So you select the right coefficient, you select the right figure, and then you calculate the elasticity of demand. Any problem so far? Okay, so another key concept to note is income effect and substitution effect. So we discussed that if income increases, your demand can either go up or go down. If income increases and this increases, it is known as good is known as normal good, and if income increases and demand decreases, good is known as Giffen good. But now the question is, how does it actually happen? Why would this demand increase or why would this demand decrease? This happens due to substitution or income effect. Sorry, not Giffen goods, this is inferior goods. Inferior goods. Normal goods and inferior goods. So When income increases, it causes two different effects. Income effect and substitution effect. Income increase or income decrease, it causes two effects. What do we mean by these effects? So generally when your income increases, your disposable income rises. So when your disposable income rises, then there are certain goods which are luxury items. So if your income increases, you demand more of luxury item and you start consuming less of the current consumption. So for example, if you buy clothes from brand A as of now, if your income increases, maybe you switch to B. So that means with increase in income, this goods demand is decreasing, which means it is inferior. So that's why demand decreases for inferior goods. On the other hand, why does the demand for normal goods increases? Demand for normal goods increases because you consume more of them. So for example, maybe food or maybe something else. That is, if your income increases, maybe you start out dining more or start consuming food more, and so your demand for food will increase. That is normal good. So normal good are those items in which increase in income will cause your demand to increase, and inferior goods are those items in which increase in income would cause demand to decrease. But then there is this is simple income effect. But then there is another effect which is known as substitution effect. And what is that? Okay. So what is substitution effect? So let's say that if I tell you that the price of product A has decreased, its demand will increase. And if I tell you that if price of product A has increased, its demand will decrease. This should be the case generally. But then again, when price decreases, indirectly income increases. Why? Because if you have an income of $100 and price of A is, let's say, $20. So currently you are consuming 5 units. But if its price decreases from 20 to 10, then consuming 5 units will result in only $50 of expense. That means you have additional $50 left to be spent. So that means a decrease in price indirectly causes income to increase. So that means when price of a product changes, it does not only impact the consumption, but it also impacts the income. So if price decreases, demand increases. That is simple. This is known as substitution effect. So for example, if a price decreases here, demand will increase. This is substitution effect. But due to this decrease in price, income has increased. If income increases, demand for normal good will increase. This is known as income effect. So there are two effects, income effect and substitution effect. Substitution effect, income effect. This is normal good. Now I go on to inferior good. Again, if price decreases, demand will increase, which is substitution effect. But if price decreases, income will increase. If income increases, demand for inferior goods decreases. So that means a decrease in price will cause increase in demand due to substitution effect, which is positive effect, but it will cause decrease in demand due to income effect. So that means in inferior goods, the substitution effect will be positive, income effect will be negative. Now the question is, what is the net effect? Net effect will depend on the magnitude of these two. If substitution effect is higher than income effect, net effect will be increase in demand. That is, price decreases, demand increases. But if income effect is higher than substitution effect, then a decrease in price will lead to decrease in demand. These type of goods in which income effect is higher than substitution effect, they are known as Giffen goods. So Giffen goods are those particular type of inferior goods in which income effect is higher than substitution effect. So price and demand starts to move in the same direction. If price decreases, demand decreases, price increases, demand increases. Any problem so far? There is another type of goods which are known as Veblen goods. So remember, Veblen goods are also those goods in which price and demand moves in same direction. But they are not Giffen goods. There is a difference between Giffen good and Veblen good. Giffen goods are those goods in which income effect more than offset substitution effect, and due to that reason price and demand moves in same direction. Veblen goods are those goods in which demand is related to price, that is, higher the price, higher would be demand. For example, premium watches, if they are sold for higher prices, demand will be higher. If they cut down the prices, demand will also decrease. Why? Because people buy them because they are premium for that value. So remember difference between Veblen goods and Giffen goods or inferior goods. And remember that Giffen goods are a type of inferior goods. Veblen goods are luxury goods, not Giffen, not inferior goods. Any problem so far? So remember this relationship that for normal goods, if price fall, both are positive effects, substitution and income. So demand curve is not downward slope, downward sloping. Inferior good, if price fall, substitution will be positive, income will be negative. If substitution effect is higher, demand curve will be normal. But if income effect is higher than substitution effect, that is, if substitution effect is lower than income effect, then demand curve will be an unusual demand curve, which is upward sloping curve. Any problem so far till here? Okay, so that was about consumer and demand. If I talk about firm, firm relates to supply, demand is related to price, supply is related to cost. So remember key fundamental that if cost increases, generally supply will decrease. Generally, not always, but generally. And if cost decreases, supply will generally increase. Now the question is that how do you measure cost? What are the different types of cost? So this reading only gives you an introduction to cost. So we will just discuss the introduction and move on. So when we talk about cost, cost is a cost of product. So when we talk about product or when we talk about cost anything, there will be three key terminologies that you will see: total, average and marginal. Total means total production or total cost, whatever. So for example, if I tell you total is 100 units, $100, whatever. Average means total output divided by total input. So for example, I tell you that you produce 100 units and you produce 100 units by using 20 workers. So output per unit of worker is 100 divided by 20, which is 5. So 5 units is your average product. Marginal is that how many more units will be produced when you employ one more resource. So for example, I tell you that you have 5 workers and you produce 100 units. Now you add one more worker, you make a total of 6 workers and your production becomes 110. You add one more worker and now you have a total of 7 workers, your production is 150. So this addition of product with addition of one worker is known as marginal product. So marginal product for 6th worker is 10 units. Marginal product for 7th worker is 5 units. So this is marginal product. Remember that there are two concepts: increasing marginal returns and diminishing marginal return. If adding a new worker increases marginal product, that is known as increasing marginal return. But if adding a new worker decreases marginal product, like in this case, when I added 6th worker, I got 10 units. When I added 7th, I got 5 units. So that means my marginal product is diminishing. Total product is increasing, but marginal is diminishing. This is known as diminishing marginal return. And generally you see diminishing marginal returns in the economy. So that means as you employ more and more resources, the addition to your total product would continue to decrease. Any problem so far? Similarly, if I talk about cost, total cost is known as total cost. For example, $100. Average is total cost divided by number of units. For example, $5. And marginal cost is the cost to produce one more unit. So remember this total, average and marginal definitions. Total, average and marginal product and total, average and marginal cost, both. Any confusion so far? So that means in order to produce something or in order to have an output, you need input. What is that input? The input is resource. And what is that resource? There are two key types of resources, labor and capital. And how do we analyze productivity of these? Productivity is simple total output that they are producing divided by total input. So for example, total output divided by number of workers, that is productivity of labor. Total output produced by machine divided by number of machine hours or number of machines, that is productivity of machine. So that is how you calculate productivity. Now what actually impacts the supply or what actually drives supply? So remember, supply or output is dependent on two key factors. One, cost of resources, and second, productivity of resources. If productivity increases, you can produce more with the same resources and so supply will increase. If cost increases, your supply will decrease. So that means that cost and productivity are two factors which would determine supply, and only looking at the cost is not enough. You should also look at productivity, because if productivity increases, overall cost will decrease, because you can produce more with the lesser amount of labor or lesser amount of machinery. Any confusion? So when you are comparing productivity of labor and capital, you take output per unit of labor and output per unit of capital, and that's how you compare it. And where will you invest? You should invest in the resource which is giving you more productivity. So generally how it happens is that if you have, let's say, labor and capital, if you employ more and more of these resources, their marginal product will decrease. Marginal product decreasing means that they will give you diminishing marginal returns. So let's say that labor has a marginal product of 20, capital has a marginal product of, for example, 30. In this case, if capital has a higher marginal product, then what you should do is you should employ more of capital and lesser of labor. When you employ lesser of labor, its marginal product will increase, and when you employ more of capital, its marginal product will decrease, and eventually these two will converge. So if one of the resource has higher productivity, you should employ more of that resource until and unless both becomes equally productive. So you should choose to invest in the resource which gives you higher productivity. Any problem so far? Okay, so cost associated with one additional unit is marginal cost. Cost associated with one additional, revenue associated with one additional unit is marginal revenue. So remember, marginal revenue will decrease as you increase output. Marginal cost will increase as you increase output. Any problem so far? And if I have to draw a curve, marginal revenue will be a downward sloping curve and marginal cost will be an upward sloping curve. So remember, your profit maximizes at the point at which marginal cost becomes equal to marginal revenue. This is the profit maximization point. remember this. This is very, very important. Memorize it. That profit maximization point is the one at which marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And your revenue is maximized at the point where marginal revenue becomes zero. This is the point at which total revenue is maximum. And this is the point at which marginal cost and marginal revenue, at which profit is maximized. So you should know profit maximization point and total revenue maximization point. Any firm would operate at a point where profit is maximized. That means any firm would want to operate at a point at which marginal revenue and marginal cost are equal. So let's say if a firm is operating here where marginal revenue is higher than marginal cost. So marginal revenue is higher than marginal cost. So if it is operating here, it would want to move towards a point where these two become equal. So that means if a firm is operating at a point where marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, it will increase production. And by increasing production, it will move towards MR equals MC. On the other hand, if there is a firm which is operating at a point where marginal revenue is lesser than marginal cost, it will cut down production to reach MR equals MC. So it will decrease the production. So remember these points. This is very, very important. If marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, a firm will increase production. If marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, a firm will decrease production or decrease output to reach the profit maximization point. Remember, this is profit maximization. This is not revenue maximization. Revenue maximization happens when marginal revenue equals 0 or when marginal revenue becomes 0. Any problem so far? So when a firm sells something, it generates revenue, and that is total revenue. In order to sell something or generate that revenue, it incurs some cost, which are known as total cost. This total cost have two components: accounting cost and economic cost. Accounting costs are the cost on your P&L which do not take opportunity cost into account. Economic costs are those which also include opportunity cost. So if I add opportunity cost to accounting cost, that will make total cost or economic cost. So remember, economic cost include both accounting as well as opportunity cost, and total cost is your economic cost, while accounting costs do not include opportunity cost. Any problem so far? So let's say there is a company which has accounting cost of $100 and opportunity cost of $20. So its total cost is $120. Let's say its total revenue is, and this total cost is economic cost. Let's say its total revenue is $110. So it has $110 total revenue, correct? It has accounting cost of 100. So what is its accounting profit? Its accounting profit is 110 minus 100, which is $10. So that means it is making a profit, accounting profit, but it is not making economic profit. Instead, it is making